Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the Artful Chiropractor podcast. My name is Dr. Ray Daniels, and I just want to thank you all for bearing with me these last couple weeks. Been working through some things and trying to get the ball rolling and being consistent with these episodes, but hopefully that gave you some time to go back and listen to some of the other ones that maybe that you weren't caught up on or wanted to listen to again and reintegrate. But anyways, I'm so excited and stoked to bring to you Dr. Kate Jones. She has been on the list for a very long time, and we finally were able to make it happen. So I'm so grateful that she's made the time, and I think you all will definitely dig this episode. Dr. Kate is a family chiropractor, dedicated wife, and playful mama of two. Her transition to and through motherhood, which started in chiropractic school, has been an interesting one that has shaped her into the powerful woman she is today. As a former Kairos Training Culture club facilitator, she leads as a strong female example in the KTC community, an advocate for her son who has dynamic needs. She provides an empowering voice and support for parents and children with a variety of special needs. In less than a year, she has grown her practice to consistently collect over $10,000 a month individually while working 20 hours a week, raising two kids, supporting her husband's expanding career, and overcoming postpartum depression and anxiety naturally. Along with blooming in her chiropractic practice, she has developed an 8-week program where participants learn her selfish method for better understanding their own individual needs for self-care and self-love. In this episode, we will dive deep into that, as well as so many other topics. It's super wide-ranging, but again, I'm just so excited to have her on. Dr. Kate has been such an amazing influence in my life. I still remember the very first time that she helped me with my very first cervical attempt, and she had jacks in her arms, and she came over and just shared with me how to soften my hands and brought so much to my learning experience. Dr. K is truly amazing. She has had a profound impact on so many people, and her journey is just extraordinary. Knowing what she has gone through and how she has overcome these hurdles and these challenges, and how she continues to show up with this amazing personality. She can make anybody laugh. She's so fun to be around, and I am so grateful that she was a part of my journey, and I know she will continue to be. And just the people that she's impacting while continuing to somehow do it all, and do it all with such grace and joy and connection. So I know she is going to have a huge presence, not only in the KTC community, but the entire profession and this world. She's a rock star. She's on fire, and I'm so excited to have her on the podcast. Definitely check out the resources, because she's got an awesome program coming down the pipeline, and I think she's going to have a ton of different programs in the future. So definitely stay connected to her if you are not already. And those resources can be found at the bottom of the show notes. So if you're checking out this episode, you can scroll down and all of the show notes should pop up, and then we'll have those on the website as well. So with that, I know you all will dig this episode, and thank you so much for listening, and again, bearing with me these last few weeks. So with that, sit back and enjoy this one with Dr. Kate Jones. Dr. Kate Jones, welcome to the Artful Chiropractor.
Hey.
It's so good to finally have you on. It's so weird to think that it's taken this long to have you on the podcast, but I trust that it's exactly the right time.
Oh, absolutely. It's good to see your face. I know nobody else can see your face right now, but I can. It makes me very happy.
Likewise. It is, definitely been a long time, and preparing for this interview, it was really fascinating to go back and think of the first time that I don't even know if it was an introduction, but it was the first camp that I went to, and I'm like sweaty palms, like so nervous, getting ready to do like adjusting cervical round, and like shaking, and then you've got like Jackson on your hip, like he was still really young, and you're like, all right, I need to go help this kid out. So you like come over and just like
he was
totally help
camp.
me. Yeah, it was pretty cool. So that's like my first memory of Kate just like being really present with me and helping me like guide my hands a little bit. So it was funny.
Oh my gosh. Baby on a hip since day one.
Right. So I think that's a kind of a cool, place to start. Is I think you've had a pretty unique journey, and just your time frame and trusting your own process and
Oh yeah.
going through all of that. But flashback really quick. I'm curious if there's anything like childhood, younger Kate Jones that facilitated this journey into chiropractic, or just like connecting and healing, with people.
Ooh, that's a good question. I feel like I've always been the person that people have come to for like, hey, can I talk to you about this? Or and I get a lot of that from my mom, because our house was always the house that like everybody went to. Like everybody kind of confided in my mom. It was like this homey space that, all my friends would come over and we'd all just be there.
Right.
So I feel like there was always a sense of community that I had around me, and something that I've always really carried forward. But from a chiropractic standpoint, I mean, I grew up dancing. I did my undergraduate work in dance. I saw a chiropractor like maybe once or twice when I was in school in my collegiate program. But other than that, like until I met Brett, I had like no clue about chiropractic at all. And
Gotcha.
then, yeah, nothing.
Right. How did dance facilitate your artistry within chiropractic, or just the awareness around that? Just having that background.
So for me, a lot of the concepts that I learned being a dancer my entire life and then going through a college program, one, I spent a majority of my life watching other people and seeing how they moved, and then being able to reproduce that in my own body. So I had this very acute eye for seeing the movement and how they were connected in the through line. And so when that came to dancing with people on the table, and then with concepts of weight share and, different dynamic of movement, being able to apply that into adjusting and sustainability in the way that I use my body has been incredibly beneficial. So I'll be like working with somebody on the table and moving around and like one leg's up, or I'm, using my body in all these different ways, and giving myself creative license to do that. Has been a huge sort of melting pot of those two worlds. So that's been like really wonderful. And then also, by watching people like Katina Manning adjust, I was like, whoa, okay. Right. So I can really like dance with people and partner with them and make this an experience that we have together, and use all of that wisdom and all of that knowledge that I for a long time thought was very separate, and actually serves me on a huge level when I'm caring for somebody.
Right. Yeah, that's so cool to be able to tie that background in and that dance, because it totally shifts the adjustment. And even that little experience I had with you, like I was getting all of these, strategies and setups and all these things, but like you just did like this little dance with my hands, and it was just like, oh, that feels way better. Yeah. So, to be able to drop into that space, so naturally. And then now that you really get to be able to help facilitate others who maybe don't have that background, and that's kind of tough to develop, I would say. I don't even know quite how to explain it, but what has your experience been trying to facilitate that with others now that, you found it within your own body?
I think a big piece of it is, one, taking a lot of the concepts that we learn in KTC with all the things that we're training in Kairos, and having that as a foundation, and knowing that I'm moving in my body in a way that's going to be honoring to my body, and then applying my previous body awareness to that, right. And then watching and listening. So you get all your reps in with the training, and then it's also having this fearlessness of being like, hey, could you bend that leg for me? Or maybe, externally rotate that hip, or, put your hand on like the back of your head, or drop it off of the table. And so for people that don't have that body awareness, I'm doing a lot of cueing with them. Okay. And saying, take a big breath, like really feel that, breathe into the front part of your sternum, and then exhale it out through the lower part of your back, and then lengthen through the crown of your head and drop your jaw.
Gotcha.
So I'm giving them cues for movement in a similar way that I was always cued from a choreography standpoint. And so I'm essentially helping choreograph the adjustment and using that knowledge and that language to help them unwind their systems in a way that's going to bring more ease to their experience and more ease and like global impact to their system with the adjustment and the impulse.
That's awesome. And I'm sure you've already thought about it, but I'm hoping there will be a module or something of the sort that dives, deep into that.
I think that's actually the first time I've verbally put that all together with that's what I'm actually doing. I'm like, oh yeah, I am choreographing with them on the table. So there we go.
There we go. So
it's a module. Here we go.
Here we go. This is the start of it, everybody.
Here we go.
So speaking of the fearlessness, being able to work with you a little bit in student champs and, getting to connect with you in school, like that was my perceived, notion of you. Like no matter what opportunity that came your way, like whether it's speaking on stage, telling your story last minute, like you just had courage in all of the moments and you just went for it. And part of me thinks that there was like, it's not like there was never any fear, but you always would like choose courage in that moment to do it. And I would love to hear you talk about that process, if that's just been you this whole time, or if that muscle has gotten stronger over time, or what's that been like?
I think that muscle's gotten stronger over time, but a part of that is inherently me. I was always, the kid in our family. If my grandfather brought out the video camera, I would be like, I'm going to put on a show. My gap shoes. So, and that's growing up on a stage, right? So I had performed for hundreds of people since I was a small child, and continuously done that over and over and over and over and over and over again. So I've always been very comfortable on a stage. The muscle that had to start getting strengthened was actually speaking on a stage, because most of the time when you're dancing, you're not saying anything at all. Right. So for me, I'd be like, oh, words. And today what we're going to do is this, and like just kind of awkward. But I really embrace my awkwardness too. Mm-hmm. I, have long gotten rid of, this kind of buttoned up version of somebody that I'm not, because it makes me incredibly relatable when I speak like a human and I talk like who I am. And I am weird and silly and goofy and awkward and funny, and you kind of, what you get is what you see. So, right. Having that and being able to take that and put it on a stage, and also being chucked into scenarios where it's like, okay, I remember when I first started working at Life West, and I was working for Mary, Lucas Flannery in enrollment, and the first ever Champions Weekend that we threw, it was literally like right after the whole department had gotten, completely rehired. There was hardly anybody working there. And it was, I think, maybe 6 weeks after I got hired that we were throwing the first Champions Weekend. She was like, hey, so I'm going to need you to do this with me. We have an event coming up. I was like, oh, okay, cool. I'm brand new, but let's go. And she continuously kind of just threw me into situations where she'd be like, okay, I'm going to need you to get up on stage and intro this person and MC this. And then can you run back here? I was like, okay, cool. Here we go. So,
right.
Or she would say, can you film this video, or can you go talk to this person, or can you do, so I really appreciate that sort of learning by fire. Because that, again, was one of those situations where it's like, okay, you have to stand up and tech, the AV isn't fully ready. So get up there and stretch, like stall time, like
Right.
go up there and talk for 5 minutes about something and be engaging, because there's a whole bunch of people that are here and they're curious about chiropractic, and we want to make sure that we're making them feel welcome and, held and comfortable and entertained.
Right. Yeah, that's like being thrown in the fire like that is such an awesome way to learn, because you don't really have a choice and to build this huge story up in your head, but it's like such an awesome rep. And then combining that with just being yourself, which is your superpower in a lot of ways, because you just make everybody laugh and you're not even trying to. It's just you're being your authentic self, and people connect with that, and you're, goofy, awkward, whatever it is. It's like, it gives people permission, like, oh, okay, cool, I can do that.
They're like, oh, this chick's weird. I can obviously be weird. Like, okay.
That's so awesome. And it's important, for the people we take care of. It's like at some level, you've kind of got to let it down a little bit so they can see the realness of you and not just this chiropractor, this doctor, and take you so seriously, right?
I'll do that in my, if I'm getting to, like at the end of an initial care plan with somebody and we're going over, their integrative exam findings and talking about all the progress that they've made and, looking at all these different functional measures and really taking a minute to celebrate them. Like I'll be in there, I'll be like, girl, like, do you see how much your posture has changed and how amazing you look? Like, first of all, get it. Like you are taking better care of your body. You started working out, you're eating right. Like you're getting fit. Like, look at these pre and posts. Like you are crushing it. Like I was like high-fiving this woman in practice the other day. I was like, yes, queen, like you go right on ahead. And they love that. So I'm like their cheerleader. I'm so excited for them. I'm bringing positivity and love and appreciation. And again, finding ways to empower them, but I'm doing it in a way that is, they still respect me as, a professional, but I'm also not being put on and being fake and talking in a way that doesn't feel authentic or real to me. Because people smell that shit from a mile away.
Right. Yeah, that's huge.
Yeah.
And especially in other, other offices where it's like other professional offices, for the most part, I would say they're not getting any of that probably from the provider. And not to be overgeneralized, but I would say that's fair enough to say that they're not getting that type of authentic expression and being able to connect and really have someone rooting for you, like on the grand scheme of things.
And that's what I love about the space that's been created at the source is people will come in and they're like, wow, I've never seen a place like this. This is a chiropractic office. We're like, yeah. And we're playing like great music and there's amazing art on the walls. And it's just, you can tell that people are enjoying their time there. And like there's kids and they're playing in the playhouse and they're laughing and like people are, creating community with one another. And it feels warm and it feels inviting and it feels, they feel like they're in the right place and that people genuinely care about them because we do.
Right.
So that makes a huge difference when you're taking care of somebody.
Exactly. And I do want to circle back around to that. But before I do that, I know a little bit of your story in terms of, taking time off from school and having Jackson and then having Willow and then starting practice. Like, it just seems from the outside like, holy cow, how does this woman do this? So I would love a brief dive into that story and how you've been able to manage the different hats, but yet be so real and present and authentic to your very best in each one of them. Because it's so important for, I think real quick, just really listeners are going to have so many similar experiences. They're just like, all right, how am I going to do this? And you've done it.
Yep. And I'm still in it.
Right.
Too. It's like I still have two very young children. So, I mean, obviously met Brett before chiropractic college when he was doing prereqs, ended up working for the school, decided to do the program. My first quarter, I split into 3 quarters and I was still working 36 hours a week, planning our wedding and taking class. My second quarter, I went down to, I think 20 hours a week in the working at the school, and then added a full class load on the 14-quarter schedule, and I got pregnant with Jax. So here we go.
Man.
So, and that was also I think that was the quarter that Brett graduated. So I'm still working part-time. I'm pregnant. My husband just graduated, starting practice. Here we go. So I stayed in school with a full load of classes for as long as I could. And then I was due around midterm. So I took that quarter off, and then I took the next quarter off, because I was like, there's no way I'm personally going to be able to have any idea what the hell I'm doing and go back to class with like a 4-week-old. I was like, I'm not prepared for that.
Right.
So for me, I was like, I need another quarter to like pull my shit together.
Yeah.
And then I came back in January, went through more of school. And during that time, when after Jax was born, we had a nanny. We had a full-time nanny, and Brett was full-time in practice. And so he was supporting our family, and I was still working at the college, and we had Jax. So when I was at school, I was either in class or in the office working with prospective students,
right,
or pumping, because that's part of being a mom too.
Yeah.
The fake baby. And then when I was home, I was mom. So I really made that clear distinction between when I'm at school, I'm doing everything that I can possibly do at school to make sure that my coursework is handled, that I'm studying for what I need to study for. Because I knew as soon as I got home, like, I'm making dinner, I'm hanging out with my family, I'm, doing household stuff, and I wanted to be present with them. And then couple quarters after that, like 3 years, almost exactly, I got pregnant again. The kids' birthdays are literally 4 days apart. So right before
this next pregnancy, really quick, through that process, was there a moment or series of moments, or did it ever come up where you're just like, what the hell am I doing? Like, do I really want to go through with this?
Yeah. Yep. As soon as I got pregnant with Jax, I was like, is this the universe telling me, like, this is not what you're supposed to be doing? Because at that point, I was in my second quarter of school, but it was my fourth quarter taking class because I had split that first quarter up.
Right.
So I was sitting there like, okay, I'm investing this time and this money into this, program, but, am I hitting these roadblocks as like a way for, you should be choosing something else. Right. And I really had to sit with that and say, why did I choose to do this in the first place? And for me, it was, I knew that if I was going to be in the office, because I knew I was going to, I was either going to run the practice and, run the front desk and be in there and be a part of it. And I knew that if I had to watch Brett adjust every single day, all day long, I was going to be almost jealous of that.
Yeah.
Almost like put me in the game, coach. Like, I want to do that too. Like, I want to work with people. I want to, have this experience. And so,
and there might have even been resentment on some level.
Totally.
After a certain amount of time, right?
Yeah. And so I think, for me, I had to sit down and I was like, if I quit right now, would I be able to sit down with my child 15 years from now and say that I was happy with the decision that I made? And the answer was no. And I didn't want to be that example for my child that, something hard came up and so I gave up on something that I wanted to do. I wanted to be an example of perseverance and of being able to continue going after goals that were important to me and not have like an unplanned pregnancy disrupt, like, it's going to change the way that it happened and the focus and the timeline of certain things. But I was not going to say I'm going to quit school because I knew that I wouldn't be able to have that conversation. Right.
That's so inspiring, because it's so many times something like that happens and people make the other decision, right? And then maybe with their kids later on in their life, they're telling them you can do anything.
Yeah.
But then they're like, well, why didn't you do it? So it's just like that, always that little bit of that contradiction.
Totally.
It's just like, but now you get to like, yes, this is what it took. It was so many struggles and ups and downs, but like you can show them. And even, people listening right now, like chiropractors who are going through the same thing and they're on the midst of like, is this the right thing? Like being able to ask yourself, like what your future self is like talking to you or telling you.
Yeah.
Like, that's
And again,
awesome.
that decision's different for everybody.
Right.
You know, like I could have had that conversation, and if I put myself in that future self scenario and said, you know what, I would be okay saying, I got pregnant. This didn't feel like the right choice for me anymore. And I really wanted to shift my focus in a different way. And if that felt like a resounding yes, then I would have been okay with that, but it wasn't. So I continued on.
Right. And that's honoring. Right. So honoring yourself, like that's ultimately like listening. Super important in listening. So you got pregnant again. So not that only did you go through this amazing feat in this mountain while you were in school, this is one of the most challenging times outside of school. You have Willow. And let's pick up there.
Oh man. So I got pregnant with Willow like the November before I graduated. Like I said, the kids' birthdays are literally 4 days apart. Apparently Thanksgiving is a fertile time in the Jones home. And and so I got pregnant with her, and then same thing. Brett and I, you know, I was right at the end of school, and it was, you know, chiropractic college is a lot. It's really demanding. It puts a huge strain on your relationship with yourself, with your partner, with your friends, with all of these different things, because you're living in this little microcosm for a long time. And so it's really easy to kind of lose touch with what's not happening right in front of your face all the time. And you're there from like 7 to 5 during the day. And then as soon as you're in the health center, you're taking care of people. So you're there even longer. And so Brett and I, it was hard, you know, like we had been he was in practice, and being in practice is completely different than being in school. And so I was in school, and I, you know, was doing all these things, and he was in practice and he was doing all these things. And we were like kind of like ships passing in the night a little bit, but still really supportive of one another. But I mean, it definitely tested our marriage for sure. And in being in school and being a new mother, really felt like I lost myself. I didn't even know like really who I was. And so this was, you know, last quarter of chiropractic college, like we were in a rough spot, and I was pregnant and almost getting ready to graduate. That was probably one of the biggest to our marriage to date, but we, you know, came through that, finished school, graduated. I think I was like 7.5 months pregnant when I like walked the stage for graduation. And then it was okay. I graduated. I wasn't going to start I graduated in June. I wasn't going to start practicing because I was due in August. And then I knew that if I started seeing people, I would just have to go on maternity leave. And then it was going to be the holidays. And then we were throwing the Artful Convention. So I was like, you know what? I'm just going to give myself a minute and be home and be mom and, you know, sort of sort this whole thing out. And then once the new year comes around, then I'll start practicing.
Right. Really quick. Yeah. I know that's just a pause for a second.
Yeah.
You know, reconnecting back to yourself, like at that moment, what did that look like for you? Because it's one thing to be able to reconnect with yourself when you've got a certain amount on your plate, but a child and pregnant and working through a marriage and graduating and your partner is running a practice, like that is a very challenging time to reconnect to yourself.
Absolutely.
So I'd love to hear you take a little bit of a sidestep and just talk through that process before we keep going. Totally.
Funny enough, that's really I created this whole other thing called Selfish, which is this basically a program for exactly that, where I kept having this conversation with people over and over again, where they're like, how did you do that? What did you do? I'm feeling the same way. You know, I've had kids and I've like lost myself, or I've been so focused on all of these other external things that like, I don't even know who I am anymore. And it came down to radical prioritization, and also getting really good at multitasking and really finding the areas of understanding what needs were being met, what needs were not being met, the emotions tied to those needs, and then figuring out what is the most important thing for me to take care of right now. So it's been this like 2-year long process, and really taking a deep look and evaluating multiple areas of life, because it's not just like me, myself, like, okay, like, do I need to shower it's not like weird, basic surface level things. It's like,
Right.
How do I communicate with my partner? How do I communicate with my family? What's my relationship to my actual self and the things that I do that make me feel, confident and sexy and fun and alive? And what are the ways that I'm going to actually get those needs met? And then where the hell in my schedule am I going to get these needs met? And then figuring out, again, the rhythms of that and how that shifts and changes, depending on where you're at with practice, with kids, with like all of these different pieces. So it's kind of this like complex, like enigma of a thing, but
Right.
I definitely had to break down these different areas and then saying like, okay, I'm a total, if you look at like my Google Drive, I'm the organized person that has all the folders, then they're all color coordinated, and then there's like subfolders and then different things. It's kind of a little obnoxious, but I had to do that with myself and finding the things that really were reconnecting me back to who I was, my connection with spirit, my connection to myself, my connection to my kids, my connection to my friends and my family, and to Brett.
Mm-hmm.
And really becoming wholly me again, rather than, because we find it ends up being this weird like codependence that you drop into, because you're expecting somebody else to get your needs met, but you're refusing to actually get those needs met on your own, whether you're consciously or subconsciously doing that. And then you're putting all of this energy and like importance on somebody else, or you're just completely blind to what that is. And you don't even know how to take an inventory of where you're at. And then you're wondering why you feel like shit and you feel so disconnected.
Right. Yeah. I mean, taking that time for that inventory to really see what is going on is super critical. And like you mentioned, I think some of these patterns, they are subconscious, and maybe that other person, you don't rely on them in the beginning, but then you start going through the whirlwind of different scenarios in life, and like subconsciously they start feeling certain needs that you've really just neglected yourself to not be able to give yourself that time. So that's awesome. And I'm really grateful that you shared that, because it's going to really, really help. And just the radical prioritization, I really think that's crucial, and just finding whatever works, for you.
And even being able to do that work and then get to a point where, for me, it's like, I don't have time to sit here for 3 hours and figure it out. I had to do it enough times to be able to say, like, I need a minute. I'm going to go in the other room, and I can like run a Rolodex of things through my head of like, I'm feeling this way. Okay, why am I feeling this way? Is this story? Is this narrative? Is this past trauma coming up? Is this something that I'm completely blowing out of proportion? Like, is this actually real? Is this not related to me? Is this related to me? What is it? So being able to quickly analyze where I'm at, and then be able to say, like, I need X, Y, and Z in order to bring me back home.
Right. For people who haven't developed that muscle of being able to do that very quickly, but yet may still be in a situation where there's not time to take 20, 30, 45 minutes to sit and meditate and go through where your needs are, is there something that can facilitate that process? Or is it more just like breaking it up throughout the day of like checking in with yourself and just... I
think that's one of the best ways that you can start doing that, is doing that, little check-ins throughout the day. Like starting your day being like, okay, where are we taking today? How am I crafting my day? For me, it's like, I'm not as, militant and really great at a morning routine. Brett's like always, he's so on it all the time.
Right.
And for me, I know that I go like in and out of that level of, of discipline. But for me, even going into I'll always, if I'm in the shower, I also spend 5 minutes, like I'll meditate in the shower. Because I can multitask.
Right.
And then if I'm driving to work, like I'm listening to something, on like a podcast or something that's inspiring me, or I'm like pumping myself up with music.
Yeah.
And then when I get into the office, then, we always meet as a team. We do morning intentions, and then we set the tone for the day.
Love it. And you've also, well, I think it was an intention that I saw on Facebook, like you guys were trying to get the technology off at a certain point and then not on until a certain time in the morning. Is that still going pretty well?
Yeah, it's been huge. And like you were saying too, having these moments of check-in with yourself as you go throughout the day, these little mini check-ins, like how am I doing? And doing the same thing with the people that you love and care about. But yeah, in the evenings, we have been turning all electronics off at 8:00. All the artificial light in our house is off at 8:00. We light candles. The kids are generally like in bed by 7:38. And then we don't do any electronics with them until like 10 in the morning. So Saturday morning, you want to watch cartoons, it's not going to happen until 10. And for us, it's been really beautiful because the house just kind of calms down. And you can settle in and, you have your moments to make sure your space is clean. And Brett and I have had really, really great connected evenings with one another because, we're letting our systems chill out, and then we're able to sit with one another. And that's something else that we've been really good about too, is finding that check-in with one another and showing gratitude and appreciation for each other at the end of the day, like before we go to sleep. Has been really beautiful as well.
That's awesome. Again, thank you for going down that little side route.
All the rabbit holes.
So connecting back to the original, after you got through the Artful Convention and things kind of relatively started to slow down maybe for you, that transition back into actual practice. And it was so fascinating when you told me, like, you're just coming up on your actual first year in practice. Like, you're still right in the trenches.
Yep. Sure am. So after Artful Convention, which was in mid-January, I got licensed in and January was our Jan. I didn't really step, because then we ended up finding our nanny at the Artful Convention. Funny enough, she was part of one of the like art experiences that we had there. And so she became our full-time nanny, and her availability was shifting. So if there was a time where she wasn't available, I was still going home and like being with the kids. And so I stepped into practice, I think middle of February, but wasn't fully in until March. And then I started in practice in March, and then around April, I was starting to feel a lot of signs and symptoms of postpartum depression and postpartum anxiety. And I knew that I wasn't okay. And I expressed that to Brett, because I was like, I don't feel like myself. Like, I'm having some like real fucked up stuff in my head, and just feeling really down and out, getting really angry for no reason, feeling really anxious for no reason. Like, I was like, that's when you start like looking stuff up, because you're like, am I making this up? Am I not making this up? I was like, oh no, like, yeah, this is a
real thing.
Probably what this is. And I think a big piece of that was, one, continuing that self-care for myself, and two, really feeling the actual opportunity to step into my own independence. And so when I expressed that to Brett, he said, he was supportive of me, obviously. And then I think it was a couple days later, he woke up in the morning and then comes into our room. It's like 5:00 in the morning and I'm asleep. It wasn't a day that I was going into the practice. And he was like, hey, I got to talk to you. I'm like, what do you want? get up, come outside. Like, really? Why? And so we go and we walk into the kitchen. He's like, I'm taking a sabbatical in May and you're covering my practice. I said, what? And he said, yeah, it's time for you to feel what that feels like, to not be on the fence of I'm in practice, I'm not in practice. I, am kind of on this half being stay-at-home mom, half being in practice, but never fully being in either of those spaces or fully occupying my role in either of those places.
Right.
And at first I was like, don't tell me what to do. Like, get out of my face. I was like, Brett Jones coming over here trying to tell me, like, I'm going on a sabbatical and you're taking over my practice. You're going to cover all my people, blah, 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 blah. I'm like, I'm going to be working all these shifts, my shifts plus your shifts. And seeing, I just got like mad defensive about it and kind of sassy and a little bitchy. And then I was like, fine.
Right.
And it was actually the best thing for me. So I ended up, essentially just being thrown into seeing a ton of people. And it was amazing. And from that experience, it was really interesting because these are people who had been with Brett for some up to 5 years of care with him. And here comes this little 5'4" woman who adjusts very differently than him. And this is another really big thing. If you're practicing with your partner, even just in general with adjusting, cut out the comparison game as soon as you possibly can.
Oh,
because
such
I had
important point.
It's hard. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I had such a hard time because I felt there was this expectation of me to show up in a certain way. And that was never put on me by Brett. It was always put on me and by my own insecurities. Mm-hmm. And really being able to own the interactions that I have with people and knowing that I'm me and the experience that they're going to have with me is unique because I'm the only person that's made like me. So I'm obviously not going to adjust like Brett or like Darren or like Austin or like Lauren or like Jordan or anybody else who's at the source. Because there's only one Kate. Like when we're dancing together, it's a totally different dance. And so getting thrown into that level of independence really afforded me this opportunity to say, okay, I can do this. I can actually be in practice. And it gave me a lot more confidence. And from there, I started to build and I started to grow and then have really just, I took 2018 was like a big expansion year for our family and for me and for Brett. And, even at the close of 2018 and the transitions into 2019, in this last month and a half have really seen my practice start to explode. And it's because I'm just allowing myself to be me and I'm allowing myself to connect in the community in a way that feels really authentic.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I love that you brought that up because that was such an underlying, I don't know what you would call it, just like a concern and something that needs to be addressed because so many of these listeners are going to be going into a practice where it's not necessarily they're starting their own from the beginning. Yeah. And there is some serious head stuff to work through when you're getting to see other people's people.
Oh, yeah.
And yeah, I definitely have experienced that. And it's where it's like some people, they just have an expectation, especially if someone's seen them for a long time and they kind of are expecting you to be like them. But then, like you said, when you can step up and truly just show up as yourself, then the people that are most drawn to that are going to be like, oh, that's Kate. And then that's Brett. You're getting the truest versions of each person versus oh, that's Brett and oh, that's Kate trying to be like Brett while adjusting. And, so it's, I don't know. I just really think that's such an awesome point to highlight And it's way easier said than done, I would say. Takes some
Yeah.
time to be able to like
Oh, for sure.
step
And
up in
especially
it.
if you admire somebody and have trained with somebody
Yeah.
or look up to somebody, um, we as humans like to emulate stuff that we like.
Right.
So it's not that you're doing something wrong. It's just checking yourself and saying, where am I in this? Or am I trying to put somebody else's mask on and pretend?
Right. And then that has really continued to, you've been able to transition that into building your practice, into
Yeah.
getting out into the community and connecting with people. And I imagine it's so much easier being yourself, like getting back to your superpower, right?
Yep.
And being able to build a practice like that, where it's like you're not trying to be in someone else's shoes.
No, not at all. And that's the other thing that I love too with what we have at the source and what's been created through that and through Kairos Business Mastery is I have a framework,
Right.
I have really dialed in systems and procedures and all of these different things that make me feel really confident in the care that I'm giving, feel really congruent in the way that I'm communicating chiropractic, feel really in integrity with how we're caring for people. That's like a through line from all of the training that I've done. And now I'm also still allowed to be myself. And so I've been able to, sort of test these different things and say like, okay, like, Brett's done this and Brett's been successful at doing it this way. Like, is it just him? Well, no, because you see all the other associates now thriving.
Right.
But we all communicate completely differently.
Yeah.
But similarly, there's principles to it.
Right.
But I guarantee you, like, Dr. Jordan's not yes queening somebody. Maybe he is. I don't know. You never know.
The framework in which, has those principles, but it just facilitates the uniqueness of each person.
Yep.
Yeah.
And that's what I love. And I love that that's the community that we have, because I trust everybody in that practice. And like we were saying too, knowing that they're going to show up as their unique self whenever they're, if they're adjusting somebody that is like one of the people that I primarily care for, I'll even tell people too, it's you're getting the same love, you're getting the same heart, but it's just different hands and different application.
That's actually pretty important to be communicating with the people that you take care of.
Especially in a group practice that sees. Yep. Yeah. So people will ask that too. They'll say, oh, like, will I only see you? Well, you'll see me as your primary chiropractor, but if there's a day that you need to come in or you need to see somebody else, there's 6 total doctors in the practice. It's a really beautiful collaborative space that we hold. And I trust every single one of them to adjust me personally and to adjust my family. So you're always going to be in good hands, regardless whose table you're on, which is awesome because it gives you so much freedom too. If there's a situation where I'm like, oh shit, I need to be home with the kids right now.
Yeah.
Or if Brett and I are, if you want to take time.
Weird.
Weird, right? You want to you have coverage in your practice and you have people that your people have, seen before. So they're like, oh yeah, sure. I'll see Dr. Kate. Or like, I'll see Dr. Brett. Sounds good.
Awesome, Kate.
Yeah.
So in terms of, lessons that you've learned, I mean, you've shared a ton already, but are there certain lessons that you think need to be really just learned on your own versus being able to learn from others? Like, are there certain ones, maybe you have examples of certain ones that you'd like to share, or just in general, what are your thoughts around that, especially coming up into your first, finishing your first year in practice, where so many of our listeners are either like somewhere in that range, or they're finishing school, or they're getting into practice. So it's like super relevant.
I think the biggest lessons, are you talking from like a business standpoint or from...
You can go business.
Where do you want me to go with this?
Whatever. You're always good at listening to whatever comes up. I think definitely. I mean, it could go business. I mean, that's definitely the...
I would say from a business standpoint, really making sure that you're getting into your community in a way that feels authentic to you. For instance, I teach at an all women's dance and fitness studio. I teach once a week on Wednesday nights. It's basically, if I were to create a dance studio, this is exactly what it would be. They're a whole bunch of really badass ladies. And I knew that if I taught, I had to be accountable to be there and actually work out. So it gets a lot of my needs met in 1 hour once a week. And I'm also educating people as I'm bringing them through class about their body. And then they sort of know that they don't sort of know, they know I'm a chiropractor, and I have a lot of conversations with women there. So that's been a really great way to be in the community authentically as myself, and also start taking care of people that I feel really resonant with. Mm-hmm. Also I'm still going out there and screening and talking to people and, having communication and connection with the community at large. And another big one too is it goes back to just your communication overall. Like, stop trying to talk like somebody that's not you.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Because you're going to come off as fake. And so the more that you can practice, again, take an outline of what, somebody's saying. Like I would go through our day 1, day 2, procedures for everything for the office. And I would have Brett deliver his day 1 and deliver his day 2 to me. And then I would ask Jordan, and then I would ask Darren, and then I would ask Austin. And so I was asking all these different questions so I could hear it in multiple ways. And then it's just continuing to do it over and over again. That builds that confidence. Mm-hmm. And then I think when you're first getting started, it's hard because you're not confident. You could be the most badass person on your college's campus, but the first time you sit down with somebody in a report, you're probably going to be a little bit awkward. Let's be honest. You could train all you want, but you're like, oh shit, this person's actually going to pay me real people money, and I'm responsible for them, and this is what we're doing. I trust chiropractic. I know what I'm doing. I know, and I feel confident in my skills, but you're still like, oh shit, here we go. Mm-hmm. So, embracing that initial awkwardness, but trying to get over it as soon as you can. So fail first and fail often, very quickly. And then knowing that you're just going to continue your confidence and understand how to, work through and overcome people's objections, right? Because you've been bathed in chiropractic for years. So for you, you're like, obviously I'm going to get adjusted. Yes, sign me up for the rest of my life. I'll bring my entire family, tell them everything. And I'll send my neighbor, and I'll bring my cat, and people aren't coming into you that way, right? So it's meeting them where they're at, understanding what their actual needs are, communicating to them, making them feel loved and secure and confident that you can help them. And then obviously, it's when you go to buy something, you're going to ask questions about it. So being able to confidently answer those questions, and if people, and helping them feel confident in what they're purchasing and the value exchange that's happening there. So building an immense amount of value for them, and then understanding as those questions come up, or if those objections come up, how to see what the need is in that, and then connect with them authentically.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's the big part, I think, is just being able to answer those objections from a place of authenticity, and just what's real for you versus what's the answers that everybody gives,
Yeah. So and also getting over this this fear of money, because we talk about an abundance mindset in chiropractic, but a lot of us are working in scarcity mindset, and we talk about providing care for people, but people are fucking scared of sales.
Yeah.
So what do you're going to those loans are coming up. You gotta, and you're selling something that has integrity and that transforms people's lives. Step into that.
Right. What is it worth to be able to
totally
grow, raise your family or be adjusted or spend that much time in the source chiropractic around that type of energy and that type of connection and all of these different, aspects that can be improved of your life, like, to not feel confident in selling that is crazy.
Yeah. And also people are oftentimes coming to you having been told that there's something wrong with them. They're broken. They're fucked up. Like something's awful, and there's no we have no reason, no idea what's going on with you, and nobody can help you, and all these other things. So it's, you better find a way to communicate to them the importance of getting adjusted, why they're getting adjusted, and you better fucking close.
Mm-hmm. Drop the mic.
Because that's you can be the best artist. You can be a phenomenal adjuster. You can train your ass off, go to every seminar, hear every single speaker, write shit down in your notebook, literally download everything, listen to everything. You can be the most extra ever with everything. But if you cannot actually sell care to people, you are never going to put your hands on anyone.
And never give that gift.
What is it all for?
Right.
And it's not something to feel bad about, and it's not something to have shame about, and selling shouldn't have this weird connotation. And it's like, call it what it is. Like, you are selling a product that has a huge return on investment, an incredible amount of value, and the ability to completely shift somebody's life for the rest of their life.
And generations to come.
Yes.
Like their grandkids, their kids, like nothing will be the same. Like it'll shift entirely.
And so you kind of, you have to like jump right on into that. Like, I'm a little scared to do this, but like, go for it.
Right. Like feel that level of fear and then still choose to go. Like just go and go and go.
And it's going to be uncomfortable. Like,
right.
But then also, have that malleability to work with somebody to be like, like for instance, I had a family that came in, mom, dad, and kid are all starting care, right? And they needed to look at the financials all together. I said, okay, cool. Like, we'll do that. You guys go ahead. We're going to get you adjusted today. Come back in. We'll have a conversation about it. And like figuring out like how to, work their care plan for something that worked with them rather than being like, this is how we do it. This is in our office. This is what I'm doing. It's a hard line. There's no way that, because I could have, that could be a family that ends up not getting care ever and has a really horrible experience versus me being like, I hear you. I see you. I'm here to work with you. Let's work on this together. And then they all end up getting care.
Right.
So it's like still be a human.
In the midst of everything.
Yeah. Listen to the actual situation.
Definitely. All right, Kate, I do want to dive into a little bit of the new step for you in terms of, co-leadership with Kairos. And, I got to hear a little bit on a, Facebook Live, but, your intention and your vision and kind of what excites you about stepping into that role.
Yeah. I think it's more of co-leadership with Brett in partnership in life rather than like co-leadership in Kairos. I mean, I think for me, seeing that need in that space and in that community, because I talked a lot about how it's been primarily a lot of men leading the charge with that. There's also a lot of perception of that work being extremely masculine. But as you progress through the training and as you go through level 1, level 2, level 3, and some of the explorations, knowing that it does embrace this feminine listening and application. But also knowing that, primarily it's been, face has been a man.
Right.
And
even though Brett does a really good job of diving into that feminine energy, it's still not quite the same, I would say, versus you like leading that right in the beginning, or at least having some of that harmony.
Absolutely. And so knowing that with Kairos and being there from the beginning of it all and seeing how this work has transformed so many people, transformed Brett, transformed our family, transformed myself, and also being like a mirror and a support for it for a long time. wanting to have more of a presence and a visibility so that people know that they can also come to me. My vision with that too is that, we're continuing to see more female leaders emerge in the KTC community, that people are feeling respected and heard, that we're, elevating to a standard of excellence that is applied across the board, but also still looks very different. We really embrace that diversity, and we really embrace that kindness and that support of one another, and not bashing people for being different, because that doesn't get anybody anywhere.
Right.
And so I think, sometimes, for instance, there's a lot of women that are in Kairos that are going to potentially practice with their partners. And so they want to know, what is that like? Or, people aren't going to ask Brett, like, what was it like to be pregnant in chiropractic school? Like, he wasn't. I was the one that was pregnant. Mm-hmm. He jokes about like, oh, let's have another one. I'm like, are you going to carry it? I'm not having that. No.
It's your turn.
He's good. Get out of my face. But yeah, so just wanting to really hold that visual, be more active. For a long time, I wasn't, and I think it was because, I was in school, I was focused on other stuff. And now that I'm in practice, and Brett and I are stepping into, like I said, more co-leadership overall together, it was a natural transition into us starting to collaborate and create more together. And that's always been the goal, being in the same profession with one another. We're obviously going to have our differences. We're going to have our separate interests. We're going to have our own projects. But then where is it that we can come together and be really potent and share the wisdom that we've, learned through all these years of experience with one another, and through all these years of these different challenges that are probably very similar to things that, people who are attracted to Kairos, and as it continues to grow, wanting to provide them with opportunity to have conversation with people who have, probably been there.
Right. And even for those people that have been like attracted to Kairos, but there's just maybe that missing link of that like feminine fire that they're just like pulls them away just a little bit. Like now that piece is there. So it's like, again, it's just going to connect those people who have been maybe just on the fence, but now like being able to have that support and that guidance and that relatability, that there's like, okay, I feel safe, I'm going to jump in,
Yeah. And that's really what I want to showcase too, is that exactly that. Mm-hmm. It is this big inclusive community where you can be yourself, and where you can learn, and where you can learn to listen and soften, and there's all avenues, and there's all this different resource available for you, and just really having that be a hub of inspiration for people that are inspired by the things that we're teaching and creating and speaking about, and continuing to learn and discover. We're not claiming to know everything. Like, that's number one. We're always looking for, how can we continue to get better? How can we continue to understand one another, understand self, understand community, and continually get better.
Right. And there's such a beauty of the principles and the like expression of the artistry and the uniqueness. Like, I love that, because there does need to be some of those principles, but then to express after that and come into your own. So I'm so excited about that, and just having that being the underlining, foundation of Kairos.
Yeah.
All right. Huge, definitely.
Huge.
And I also look at this quickfire questions, and there's a ton.
Quick fires.
So
I have a timer.
No, you don't have a timer. You could go like longer if you want on some, but
right.
we'll get to more if you're quick. All right. Who do you learn from in this moment? Maybe outside the profession.
Oh.
Or someone inside the profession.
Oh.
I'll give you a couple options.
Okay. Oh wait, inside and outside?
Yep.
Outside of the profession, I've been really sort of diving more into this female entrepreneurship space. I really like Danielle Leslie. Brett's really close friends with Daniel DiPiazza. we were just listening to one of like Grant Cardone's books on our travels up to Mount Shasta this past weekend. Inside the profession, I still love and adore anything and everything that Katina Manning does. I call her my fairy godmother. She really is. Susan Rossi's been really, really massive for me too. In friendship and just like sisterhood, like Devin Verana is really big. There's a lot. There's so many.
Yep. That's cool.
I like to sit with like listening to what my needs are and then going and like searching a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
So like, what do I want to learn? Who's really good at that?
Right. All right. Let's see. What about favorite books or audios or any resources that are kind of jumping out, speaking to you right now, or critical on your journey?
I think when I first started transitioning into really kind of breaking apart and evolving my own consciousness, I did do Brett's Momenta to Light, which is a 21-day like rapid consciousness evolution thing, which was huge. That really kind of kickstarted a lot. And then I jumped into getting more into medicine cards, which is almost like an animal spirit deck that has the wisdom from a lot of different indigenous tribes. And there are these different cards that have different animals on them, and they all have different teachings with them. So for me, if I had a question, I would literally pull a card. And then the more that I started working with that, then like weird things, like I would just see a ton of spiders in a bunch of different random places that you don't usually see spiders. And I'd be like, I'm going to go look that up. Or I'd start getting like followed by different animals and turning into Pocahontas. That's awesome. But that was something like, it's finding your little tools. I'm not a big reader because I get so distracted. So I get super squirrely. I'm like, I need a snack. Oh, what's over here? Oh, the kids need something. I'm much more of an experienced person. So for me, again, if I'm inquisitive about something or if I'm wondering about something, having a conversation with somebody is how I'll learn a lot faster and a lot deeper. Because then I'm able to sort of process through what's dropping in for me and then listen and receive what they're sharing with me and then be able to continue to evolve from that. And then also this past year, we did go to Tony Robbins' Unleash the Power Within. And that was like a 3-day rave of self-empowerment, which was really awesome too. So, I mean, for me, I like being thrown into a situation and having this, and then being able to have conversation with people versus I just get lost in books. Mm-hmm. I'm much more of like a energy exchange person for understanding and wisdom.
How about your recuperative strategies? I know we talked about, taking time like multiple times throughout the day and having check-ins, but what have you found during the last couple years that you can do that like totally drops you into a more of a parasympathetic state, just like rest and recover, like amidst all of what you still have going on? Like what has really allowed you to kind of drop into that space?
Water's really big for me. So being in water, we have a hot tub, so I'll go sit in the hot tub, or even for me, just being able to jump in a shower and just be in water for a minute will really help. Usually if I'm feeling burnt out, it's because I need sleep. So if I can sleep, but just making sure, that again, it's listening. It's listening to what my body needs. Oh, do you need a green juice? Go have a green juice. Do you need to lay on the floor and like stretch out? Go lay on the floor and stretch out. Do you need to go like take 5 minutes and chill out and just sit by yourself? Like go ahead and give yourself a timeout. Do you need to sit in your car for 10 minutes before you walk into the house and just like listen to the music that you have on in your car? Do that. But again, I need to be better at the longer recuperative strategies. But I think that I also like for me teaching, that's even though I'm putting effort into my body, it's still recuperative for me because it brings me joy and, my body feels really vital and alive, and my creativity and my connection and community to others is really being met. So that's a big one for me, having that as something that I do. And also, the quiet mornings and the quiet evenings.
That's a great point, though, on the teaching, right? Because that's a perceived like, oh, that's not really recuperative necessarily in the sense of like meditation or going on a walk or being in nature, but it connects you to community, and it connects you to that, whatever, that piece of your soul that needs a little love too. And, finding that, like, I just know for myself, like getting back into snowboarding, like I've been going snowboarding by myself, like once a week with all the snow that we're getting. And it's been so recuperative, even though physically it's not necessarily recuperative, right? But it definitely...
think of recuperation and self-care as like, I lay down for an hour and a half and somebody brushes my hair. Like, sometimes that's not how you recuperate.
Right.
But we've also been really good too at making sure that we're getting time for ourselves too. So in 2018, Brett and I were really good about taking like a couple of 3-day weekends, like every couple months, like let's do a trip together, just us without the kids. Like let's do a week in the summer, just us. And same thing in the winter. So finding those times for reconnection. And then even for me, it's, like you were saying, the fact that I get to go teach and like somebody's not trying to, ask me for something.
Right.
Mom, can I have this? Can I have this? Like, I'm talking to an adult. Nobody needs anything right now. I'm getting to like jump around and sing and dance and play. That's recuperative to me.
I love it. All right, Kate, I am so grateful for the time that you have given back and our connection. And I just know this is going to be awesome for our listeners and people who are already in the... Yeah, of course. But I'm really, really curious for like, where people can reach out to you, what they can, look out for, what's coming down the pipeline. I think you already kind of dropped a couple of potential modules, which is really cool. So
that just sparked creativity on this podcast. So I'm sure I'll be hearing from Jordan and Brett as soon as it's over. Like, hey, when are we shooting those?
Right.
So you can follow me on Instagram at Dr. Kate Jones. And then I'm also on there is usually where I'll start posting some more stuff about that online course called Selfish. That's going to launch here in the next couple of months. Obviously, you can find me through KTC, through Kairos, through the community. I'm also going to be really active in the Kairos Business Mastery program, which is going to be really great. So that's where I'm going to be sharing a lot of, my wins in practice and the struggles that I've had, and that, I'm finding friction points or finding success. And then Brett and I also just launched something, the Meta Moon Challenge, which is, working with the seasons of the cycles and seasons of the new moon. That's where, when we were talking about the 8 p.m. lights off thing, where that's going to be happening, that's a public group. So if you have friends and family that are not chiropractors that want to find different ways to connect in with themselves, that's a really great resource.
Okay. Where can people find that one? The Meta Moon Challenge?
It's Meta Moon Challenge on Facebook. We just started an open public group for that.
Okay.
And then watch out with Kairos, we're also going to be doing a lot of events coming up we're going to be doing one at the end of March, and then I believe in the beginning of November. Okay. Kairos Presents. So again, offering things that are for chiropractors, but then also going to be open to the public. So really wanting to move into, in 2019, sharing what's so beautiful about chiropractic and the different pieces of our lives and the things that we've learned with not only just chiropractors, but with our community at large. So there's a couple places.
I'll definitely have those for our listeners on the show notes, and they can just check those out. How about any final words for our listeners or requests of them? You could go advice or whatever you want to go. Anything you want to leave us with?
Yeah, I think biggest things to leave you with are always be curious about yourself. know that when you have a deep understanding, a deep respect, and this curiosity to know who you are, that is going to propel and accelerate and bring a lot more depth and love and understanding and connection to all the relationships in your life. So really reframing what it means to be selfish and not using it for, this kind of negative connotation, but more for a constructive, positive way of really knowing what your needs and your, where your emotions are coming from. And then also, just to continue to always listen with an open mind, open ears, and open heart. There's a lot in the world and a lot of judgment and hate that gets thrown around. And we see a lot of criticism and lack of understanding for things that look different, not only in the world, but in our profession. And so one of my biggest things for everybody too is to have that same curiosity that you hold for yourself, to hold it for others, and to know that we are all in this together and everybody really is, doing their best and creating their own song. And rather than jumping to conclusions about others, making sure that you're always staying positive and humble and heart-centered and seeking to better understand, because the only person who lives inside of you is you.
Beautifully said, Kate. Thank you so much for your time again.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I look forward to connecting more with you and also with this beautiful community that you've created.
Thank you, Kate. And yes, I'm already thinking about having you on when you launch that selfish module or program.
Let's do it.
See you, Kate.
See ya.
All right, TAC listeners, if you enjoy this one, head over to iTunes or Stitcher so you can subscribe to the podcast and get an automatic download of our newest episode each and every week. While you're at it, we would love a review, a comment, a rating, anything that will allow us to reach more docs and more students and continue to raise the bar in chiropractic performance training. If you haven't yet checked out the artfulchiropractor.com, you can do that for show notes for this episode and previous ones, along with any of the resources that our docs are dropping. And if you haven't yet checked out the Kairos Training Culture community Facebook page, you have to get there, send a request with a message of who you are and why you want to be a part of the group, because there are so many amazing golden nuggets that are being dropped every single day that are elevating the chiropractic performance game. So with that, I hope you all have an amazing rest of your week as always, and until next time, peace.